Many people here in Charleston are still reacting to the Michael Slager mistrial, including Circular Congregational Church Senior Pastor Jeremy Rutledge. In this special edition of Quentin's Close-Ups, I speak exclusively with him one-on-one. So, as we sit here right now, here at Circular Congregational Church, which is really not even a block away from where the Dylann Roof trial is being held, we're heading into week 2 of that particular trial, and already we've heard powerful testimonies from Felicia Sanders, as well as law enforcement officials. And I'm wondering this, Jeremy, what sticks out to you so far about this particular trial?
I think this will sound maybe very basic,
Okay.
but what really strikes me is the incredible pain.
Yeah.
Like I think we knew it would be painful.
Right.
We could think about or imagine how painful it might be, but it is a little surprising how painful it feels, and it feels almost palpable. And possibly since the church here is so close to where it's actually happening,
Right.
but I think the whole city, we're revisiting a place where we were in June of last year, and it's what strikes me more than anything is the pain of it.
Yeah.
Just the kind of raw emotional pain of remembering and reliving some of that.
And you are a senior pastor here at Circular Congregational Church, and you visit the sick all the time. You talk to the people who've dealt with, tragedies, people who've moved on to heaven and whatnot. If you were to sit down and talk with the survivors and the family members of Mother Emanuel, what would you say to them one-on-one?
I would be slow to say too much, I think they have shared a lot with us.
Right.
And so much of, I think, our role
Yeah.
as neighbors and as friends is to hear them and to be with them and to be present. And I even think in my tradition of the biblical story of Job, you have all different kinds of friends who would come to visit Job during his time of suffering. But there were also some friends who came and just put ashes on their heads and just sat with him. Didn't try to answer, didn't try to explain,
Right.
just bore witness to the pain of that. And so maybe that's not a word so much as just as a kind of bearing witness again, just being with our friends and neighbors. And anyone who's grieved is the expert in grieving. So we're all to listen to them, whether that person's going through chemotherapy or whether that person's in a trial, bearing witness in this way. But I feel like it's more our role to hear them. Although we might offer prayers for strength, courage, for resolve, or prayers for peace, whatever is needed. But I think actually they have more to teach us than the other way around.
Let me walk you across the street to the Charleston County Courthouse. As you know, the Michael Slager trial was declared a mistrial on Monday. You actually said this on Facebook on December 6th, quote, "Yesterday was another awful day in a long history of awful days in Charleston. I was heartened by the advice of an older African-American mentor who has been in the struggle for decades. Quote, it's like my elder told me when I moved to Charleston, he said, be shocked, be amazed, but don't ever be surprised by what happens down here. Then he laughed and laughed, and we said we would keep on going."
Right. So that day of the Slager trial, a number of us, Pastor Dixon, Reverend Rivers, some other people invited me and others, and we gathered at the courthouse at 8:30 in the morning to pray for justice in the case of Walter Scott. And by justice, we meant a conviction, because he was murdered. Walter Scott was murdered on video. And so we were praying that justice would come swiftly. The mistrial happened. It's possible that justice can still come with the next trial or with the federal trial, but we were praying for justice that day, that it would be swift, that it would be given to his family and to our community. So that was the start of the day. It was, excruciating to hear that a jury could watch that and not come through with a conviction. Watch that videotape that we all saw of Mr. Scott getting shot at 8 times and hit 5 times as he ran away unarmed. That was if you can't convict on that, I don't know what you could ever convict on. So it was excruciating to hear that mistrial verdict. And then it was late in the day that I was talking to this friend, this mentor on the telephone, about something else. He called about something else and I asked how he was doing.
Right.
And he said, oh, well, you know. And then he told me the story of his mentor saying when he moved down here, be shocked, be amazed, but don't ever be surprised. And he laughed. And the bookends of that day really for me were standing with older African-American clergy who've been in the struggle for so long to start the day, talking to an older African-American clergyman to end the day. And all of them so grounded, so resilient, and none of them surprised. Everybody disappointed, but nobody was surprised. And among that group, I mean, they because again, they've been in the struggle so long.
Sure.
And that, I was heartened by that, by their example. And I think that gives a lot of us strength. We say, well, if you guys can keep doing it, if you men and women can keep doing it, then we can too. And it was a setback, it was an awful day. But in the civil rights movement, that's probably more setback days, you know, than days when we make progress. We just get up again and keep doing it. So that was kind of the spirit. And his laughter was kind of a form of resistance.
Okay.
It's like, you can't kill my spirit, even with this awful news. He laughed and said, we'll get up and do it again tomorrow, you know, so.
And you know, you talked briefly about the family, and I'm wondering, if you were to pray right now for the Walter Scott family, what would you pray to God about?
If I were praying for the Scott family, and sometimes I do, you know, we stop and think of people,
Sure.
and they're really suffering. This is a national story for some, or people read the newspaper and get the update. This is their life story. And this is their son, their brother, their father who's gone. And I guess at first I would just pray for anyone. Like I would pray for anyone who's grieving. Because they have the personal grief of loss. And I think I would add to it some prayer for courage and for strength. They have that. I mean, they are courageous. They are strong. But maybe just for sustenance. Because they've been through so much. And this trial is going to happen again. And they're going to go through so much again. And everybody's looking at them. You know, they've become public figures in a certain way. And so maybe just for strength through all of that. I don't have a lot of wisdom. I would just pray for that. I think they've been extraordinary. But I pray for whatever they need. You know, they've got to be exhausted.
I bet. Let me turn to you. As we just talked off camera, you've been here as the senior pastor for 5 years now. So
Just about, almost.
Just about. Wow. When you look back to your 5 years when you began to write now, who is Jeremy Rutledge?
From then until now?
Yes, sir.
Well, I know Charleston a little better. I mean, that's a big part of it. And I know
Yes.
people in the community.
Yes.
And as we were talking, I was telling you just how warmly people welcomed me and welcomed our family. And the black community, the white community, it's been a really warm embrace. And because, you know, you hear things about Charleston,
Sure.
like, oh, you're not from here, or you're from off, or you haven't lived here for 10 generations or something. But we didn't really find any of that. People have always been kind to us. And so that's a long way of saying 5 years on, it's really wonderful to know this place. Because when I think about coming here, I really was asking, what kind of place is this?
Okay.
What is this place? And we moved from a much bigger city, several million people, and so it was a different scale, it was a different size, it had a much different culture, and the cultural richness here, which we immediately started to learn
Right.
and to listen and ask about, it became home very quickly.
Wow.
And that's just deepened, you know, over time. And then also, anyone who's raising children, this what makes it, when you raise your child in a certain place, it also becomes a part of you. You know, it becomes home
Yes.
pretty quickly.
And like I said off camera, you're a household name now.
Well, Rutledge has some kind of resonance
Yes.
in South Carolina. And that was funny when we moved here because
Yeah.
my whole life my name has been unremarkable. People misspell it,
Right.
I've never heard of it.
Right.
And then you move to South Carolina and everybody knows the name,
Right.
and that was news to us, so it was kind of funny. It's become a joke.
Oh well, it really is. And I'm talking to you right now, but if I were to talk to you for Quintus Close-Ups, say 5 years from now, what would you say about you as the pastor of this church?
5 years from now. Well, the church itself, I think, is, and I'm looking out, towards the church.
Yeah.
The church is really vibrant, and there's something very wonderful about it, from my point of view. So the church was started in 1681, when they invited me to come as the minister. I'll never forget this. They said, "Would you come and be our 38th settled minister?"
Wow.
And so there's this sense that we're just here for a time,
Sure.
for a season,
Right.
that all of these ancestors passed it down to us.
Mm.
And at Circular, those ancestors were not perfect at all, but in each generation they worked for social change.
Okay.
So they started off, many of them were owners of other people, they were slaveholders. Then they became abolitionists, became the conscience about that, worked for abolition. Then others became civil rights workers, others worked for women's equality, others worked for LGBTQ welcome. So over time, we've always evolved,
Okay.
and we've always come to conscience about certain things and say, this is where the freedom struggle is going, or this is where the movement to include and accept and love everybody is going. It's very humbling to join in that, and then to say, well, what's happening in our moment? What's our work to do? And then we'll pass it on to the next generation of people. So now I've lost the thread of our question. I got excited about the thread of Circular's history. But
I was thinking, what is your work to do?
Oh, well, I think it's really clear that a lot of our work to do right now has to do with valuing Black lives equally.
Okay.
And we're not doing that at all in this country. It's very clear. And that story is true all over the country. I mean, everywhere I go to Cleveland,
Right.
they've got a story.
Sure.
Go to Baltimore, they've got a story. Go anywhere, they've got a story.
Sure.
Oakland.
Right.
And certainly we have our stories here in Charleston. But when I moved here, again, almost 5 years ago, on the drive from Houston, which had been home, to Charleston, the whole way I was listening to the radio, and it was all the stories about Trayvon Martin and the investigation and what was going to happen to Mr. Zimmerman and all that. There's Trayvon Martin for 2 days driving. Then my first day here in the office, there was a rally at Marion Square
Right.
for Black Lives, remembering Trayvon and everybody who's been profiled. And I left the office early to go to that rally.
Wow.
And that was my first day in Charleston. And it was clear to me then, this is the work, this is our moment.
Mm.
And I didn't know how much worse it was going to get.
Mm.
After I didn't know about, Tamir Rice or
Right.
Sandra Bland,
Right.
I didn't know how long, Michael Brown, how long the litany was going to get.
Okay.
I don't think any of us knew how Black Lives Matter was going to emerge
Right.
out of the sincere grievance of the people, but so that seems to me like vital work.
Mm.
I mean, it's the moment just demands it. And I would add to it, and
Sure.
there's not a lot of conversation on this
Okay.
in Charleston. I really think how we respond to sea level rise and climate change and what's happening to the environment, I think is vital. And that it's related. I mean, it's oftentimes poor and working people who are most affected by changes in the environment. And so I'd love for us also to bring that more to the fore. We all live here at sea level. We all love it here.
Yes.
We all want to cast our nets and bring home shrimp and crabs. I mean, that's the culture. That's who we are. That's who the Low Country is. And but protecting that, preserving it, passing it on to our kids, relating to it, I think we got a long way to go there.
And you talk about the stories that you want to, I guess, basically tell.
Mhm.
What stories have touched you so far, personally?
Oh, gosh. Well, I'll just tell you one from
Sure.
today.
Okay.
So Charleston has so many stories, and I immediately went to Massachusetts troops liberating the city.
Okay.
There are those historic
Sure.
people being freed, and right after the Civil War. I went to that, but I'd rather go to today. So recently, in the not too distant past,
Okay.
the church was getting some hate mail based on some of our stands for justice. Other congregations have too. I have many colleagues in our justice ministry who've received threatening mail or hate mail of different kinds. So that has happened recently, and just today in the offering plate.
Okay.
Offering plate came forward, and the ushers were, putting the money in the
Right. safe
safe or whatever they were doing. And someone brought me something out of the offering plate, and it was an envelope, and it said "Love Mail." It was from an anonymous person,
Wow.
and it was a piece of mail that was kind and affirming and appreciative of what the church is doing, and that's that made my day. I can see that going, and so that's the most recent. That story is probably 2 hours old, and so you will be the first to know.
Exclusive.
To know the story. But I thought, something's really right when someone. It was a long letter
Wow.
of things that were appreciated.
Okay.
And I thought, okay. So, and when we take these stands for
Okay.
justice, it's, the haters let you know about it right away, but it's also good to know that just that message is getting out.
Mhm.
And there are other people who say, oh, there's a place for me here. Or, oh, there are people who stand with me here. Or, there's a place I can bring my children to grow up in a certain way.
Okay.
So, that's another heartening story just from today.
Wow. Well, Pastor Jeremy Rutledge, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm so glad.
Thank
Thanks.
you.